Today we are going to read the book, When the Beat Was Born, and it's DJ Kool Herc and the creation of hip hop. It was written by Laban, Carrick and illustrated by Theodore Taylor III. And I'm actually just showing you the dust cover right now because it has a special award on it. It has the Coretta Scott King Award that this book actually won. It's a Coretta Scott King Award winner. And Coretta Scott King was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s wife. So the books that win that award definitely follow along with what he wanted, with nonviolent change and peace. So we're going to check this book out, and I love the back of this. Do you know what that is on the back? Can you tell? Those are records. See the records? You can see these are cases with records. And I used to have records when I was a little girl, and I know some people have them now and they love them. Some kids have no idea what they are. Have you ever used one or seen one? What kind of music do you like? Because we're going to talk about music a lot today with sound. All right, I'm going to read the dedication. It says, "For my daughters, Natalie and Ella, who have more rhythm than I'll ever have." So that's from the author Laban. And the illustrator Theodore said, "To my parents, Ted and Leslie Taylor, for instilling in me a love and appreciation for all great forms of music." All right. Yeah, I love all kinds of music. I love music. It's so fun. All right, let's go ahead and get started. It says, Clive loved music. It didn't matter what kind, whether it was a wah-wah scat of jive and trumpet, a sorrowful twang of sad voice, or the belting boom of a gospel singer. Little Clive loved the way sound thumped and bumped all the way down in his stomach. He loved the way the music made his feet go. Hip, hip, hop, hippity hop. Yeah, I like some sounds that just make me move. So you remember we were talking about the records? This is actually a record player. You've probably seen a much smaller record player. This one, I know they have an example of one like this at Coastside, but when I was a little girl, we had one of those in my house. And it was like a piece of furniture, and it had the record player in it, had a radio, and then a place to store your records. And so I maybe grew up listening to the Sound of Music soundtrack and Mary Poppins. I listened to a lot of that on that record player. And I think that's why I love music so much. But I love different kinds. I love when it makes me want to move. All right, let's keep going. Little Clive lived in Kingston, Jamaica. His hero was a DJ named King George, who threw the biggest and baddest house parties in the neighborhood of Somerset Lane. On Saturday nights, everybody who was anybody made their way to Somerset Lane for King George's hot dance parties. Little Clive was too young to go to the parties, so he went to the house when King George and his friends were setting up during the day. They'd arrived pushing a big old handcart stacked with crates of records. Clive had never seen so many records. He imagined himself as a DJ surrounded by all those records, choosing just the right song to get the party jamming. He saw himself toasting like a DJ talking and singing over the instrumental B-sides of records. Clive dreamed of everyone's feet going hip, hip, hop, hippity hop. Little Clive really wanted to be a DJ. When little Clive was 13, he joined his mama in New York City. Clive wasn't sure he liked his new neighborhood in the Bronx. It was cold. He had to wear a silly winter hat with ear flaps, and everybody made fun of him. Oh. So he lived in Jamaica for most of his life. And Jamaica, I know, is in the Caribbean. It's tropical. It's nice and warm. And so now he's living in the Bronx, which is part of New York City. And they have all the seasons, just like we do in Ohio. So, that's an adjustment. I know some of my friends had never seen snow before. this year. So, I know we all have different experiences, especially where we come from. And, we think about where we live and it determines how we live. So, yeah, his life has got to be very different in New York City than in Jamaica. But Clive did find one thing besides music that made him feel like he belonged: sports. He ran track and lifted weights. He played basketball at the neighborhood playground. Soon little Clive was no longer little. He had grown to 6 feet 5 inches tall. He called himself Kool as Clyde, after his favorite basketball player, Walt Clyde Frazier. But the kids on the basketball court took one look at his size and called him Hercules. Clive cut the name short to Herc and then added Kool to make it just right. Kool Herc. The best part of being big was that he could go with his mama to neighborhood house parties where he listened to the hottest tunes and danced like crazy. Clive loved these parties. They were just like the ones he stood outside of in Somerset Lane. Do you have something that you really like, you really enjoy? He really loves music. He really loves sports. That made him feel like Clive had those things that made him feel like he belonged. What about you? What kind of things do you do or make you feel like that? One day, Kool Herc's father bought a monster sound system with giant 6-foot speakers. That's taller, or that's almost as tall as him, but definitely taller than me. Those are huge. But when he hooked up the system, instead of a really big sound coming from the speakers, a little mumbling sound trickled out. Kool Herc spent days switching wires and plugging things into other things until one day the sound was big. Not just big like Kool Herc, but big like an entire block in the Bronx. One of the first concerts I ever went to, we got up really close to the stage, and there were speakers like this stacked on top of one another. And I will tell you, my ears were ringing for days. Since then, I wear earplugs when I go to concerts because you can really do some damage by listening to loud sounds like this over and over again. So if you love music like us, like Kool Herc and I, make sure you're protecting your ears too, because you can do long-term damage that you can't replace that damage. You can't fix it. You might be able to use something like hearing aids and things like that, but that doesn't always fix the entire issue. So just keep that in mind. I like to jam out too, but it's some scary stuff sometimes. All right, let's keep going. Kool Herc and his little sister Cindy rented the rec room in their housing project on Sedgwick Avenue. They handwrote invitations telling everybody when and where to get their groove on. They posted cards around the neighborhood. They set up their father's sound system. On the night of the party, anybody or everybody who was anybody made their way to Sedgwick Avenue for Kool Herc's hot dance party. That's when Kool Herc became DJ Kool Herc. How cool that he's getting to do what he's always wanted to do. DJ Kool Herc noticed that the dancers danced crazy hard during the breaks in the song when the lyrics ended and the music bumped and thumped. Herc knew that's what dancers wanted, so he plugged into 2 turntables instead of 1. He put the same record on both turntables. He set it up so that when one record ended its break, he could flip over to the other turntable and play it again. Doing this over and over, he made a 10-second break last for 10, 15, even 20 minutes or more. Do you ever hear that in songs? You probably don't always notice it either. But there's definitely a lot going on in a lot of music. It's really interesting to like pay attention to the different parts that maybe you didn't pay attention to before. Maybe you were only paying attention to the lyrics or how the song made you feel. Think about maybe some of the repetitive stuff. Maybe somebody mixing in another song. You never know. Herc remembered the way DJs in Jamaica would chant and toast over the music. He started calling out the names of his friends during the breaks. There goes my mellow, Coke La Roque in the house. There goes my mellow, Clark Kent in the house. There goes my mellow, Timmy Tim in the house. There goes my mellow, Bombada. Everybody loved hearing his or her name called out over the music. He'd compliment people on their dance moves. He'd talk about the music and send shout-outs. He'd make up little raps like the jump rope rhymes he heard on the playground. Or he would call, "Hey, Mike on the lights, make a like a strobe." And Mike would flip the switch on and off. That sounds like a fun place to be. Over the next year, Herc took his parties to the streets and parks of the Bronx. He plugged the sound system into the lampposts. They pulled so much power that the streetlights dimmed the perfect lighting for a street party. Kool Herc's music made everybody happy. Even street gangs wanted to dance, not fight. Gangs like the Savage Skulls, the Glory Stompers, the Blue Diamonds, the Black Cats, and the Black Spades turned into breakdancing crews who performed some of the slickest moves. Herc called the coolest dancers breakdancers, or b-boys, because they loved to dance the breaks. When Herc would find a really good break, he'd shout, "B-boys, go down!" Then the breakdancers would cut and jump their gymnastics. Hey, check this out. The top rock, the down rock. So the top rock, that's the move. Down rock, the windmill, the turtle, the suicide, the one-handed handstand freeze. So all those are breakdancing moves. Kind of like how I keep hearing you guys teaching me about like Fortnite moves, you know? And do some of the different dances. I do the take the L, right? So these are just different dance moves too. That's awesome. Herc gathered a crew of his friends to rap behind his DJing. He invited Coke La Roque, a Jamaican friend, to rap. He called him his Master of Ceremonies, or MC. Coke knew all about toasting like Jamaican DJs. He was the first of Herc's crew of MCs called the Herculoids. Herc would introduce them with a rap. You rock and you don't stop, and this is the sounds of DJ Kool Herc and the sound system you're listening to is what we call the Herculoids. I think that's a job I would like. I love announcing. Soon, kids from all over New York City came to see DJ Kool Herc, who threw the biggest and baddest parties on Sedgwick Avenue. African Bambaataa, Grandmaster Flash, Jazzy Jeff, and dozens of others all wanted to be DJs, just like Kool Herc. Now, if you don't know any of those names, those are people who later became famous DJs. So that's cool to know that they were inspired by DJ Kool Herc. All right, here is a little Herc rhyme. It says, "There's no story can't be told. There's no horse that can't be rode. A noble can't be stopped. And ain't a disco we can't rock. Herc, who's the man with the master plan? From the land of Gracie Grace, Herc." I'm sure the other version sounds much better, but hey, I tried, right? Herc didn't just rock the block. He put the hip, hip, hop, hippity hop into the world's heartbeat. And I'm going to go ahead and read to you the author's notes. It says, in the summer of 1980, I was hired to do market research for a New York City Spanish language television station. My job entailed walking block by block through Harlem and the South Bronx, interviewing bodega owners about the laundry detergent they sold. In the searing summer heat, I would climb from the depths of the subway and begin my day with a clipboard and a map in hand. Since there wasn't a list of New York City bodegas, I had to just walk until I came upon a store. By the way, a bodega is like a little shop, and New York City has tons of them, okay? Let's see. In the late afternoon, I would approach a corner and hear a loud thumping. The booming would be so deep that it would almost shake the ground. My chest would pound as if it were going to explode. And as I rounded the corner, I would see the most startling sight. In the media at the time, the Bronx was considered one of the most dangerous and desolate places in America. It was America's ghetto. Movies like Fort Apache, The Bronx told stories of the drug-crazed poor committing unspeakable violence on the innocent. Both President Carter and President Reagan toured the South Bronx and gave poverty speeches. But for me, the streets of the South Bronx and Harlem revealed a very different story. In addition to a bustling community of people shopping and living their lives, I discovered a youth movement that was the antithesis of gang violence. It means it was the opposite of gang violence. When I came around that corner, I saw 50 or so teens dancing, some of the most amazing dances I had ever seen. The dances defied gravity and human flexibility. The performances were miraculous feats of physical agility, and they were all done to the beats of records spun by a DJ. I was so captivated by the music and the dancing that I started going to clubs in the East Village, Tribeca, and the South Bronx, where I listened to music like the kids were dancing to in the Bronx, and I heard the story of DJ Kool Herc. By 1980, however, it was too late to see DJ Kool Herc perform. The first hip-hop record, the Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight, had been produced the year before. B-boy dance crews were traveling around the world from Japan to Montreal to perform. And in 1980, African Bambaataa and his Zulu Nation began recording, followed by Grandmaster Flash, The Furious Five, and Curtis Blow. 30 years later, this amazing era still defines how I see the world and how I see myself in the world. Back then, no one could have believed that a few desperately poor kids would reinvent American culture. Who could have imagined that a hip-hop, jazz, and fusion group called The Roots would become the house band for Late Night with Jimmy Fallon? Who could have imagined that rap would fuse with African high life into an all-new musical form called hip life? Who could have imagined that a rapper would be invited to perform at the White House? Hip-hop's rhythms, raps, and its sense of play have not only stuck with me, but also become the background score for the 21st century. So it makes sense now to share the legacy of DJ Kool Herc, the man who first brought the hip, hip, hop, hippity hop to you. The props are true. And that is the end of that book. Check out this awesome musical timeline. What information can you find? I hope you enjoyed the book When the Beat Was Born, DJ Kool Herc, and the creation of hip hop. That's all for me. Take care.
Peace.